Hi, everyone. My name is Sammy Canold, and I'm the Associate Director on the show. I'm so excited to be here today with Eve's doctors from the Mayo Clinic. You can read about their work in the stuffers that are in your programs, but to just give you a brief overview, Dr. Sean Dowdy is the chair of gynecologic oncology and the chair of surgical quality at the Mayo Clinic. Dr. Eric Dozois is a professor of surgery, also at the Mayo Clinic. And Dr. Deb Rhodes is a professor of medicine and a clinician in the breast diagnostic clinic, also at the Mayo Clinic. And you may recognize them from the play as Dr. Sean, Dr. Deb, and Dr. Handsome.
We think you're handsome too, Sean.
I wanted to start just by talking about your reactions to seeing the play today. I know you've seen it before, but in experiencing the story today that you lived in so many ways, what resonated? Were there parts that stood out to you today or were particularly poignant?
Yeah, you know, it was sort of more humorous than I remembered. So I appreciate that. So and that, you know, it sort of shows how resilient she is too, that she could live through something like this and still kind of make it into a humorous play. So that's part of the things that I really appreciated about it. And I think it's more humorous than I remembered a few years ago even. So, but I'm also glad that you saved this, because I thought that was a really nice ending to it, to make it sort of end on a positive note and sort of a homecoming of sorts. So I really like that.
Yeah, I would add to that. It was incredibly intense the first time I saw it, and it was even more so today. I mean, it was just, there's so much to it. There's so much depth and emotion, and it's like a roller coaster of your emotions. 1 minute you're laughing, the next minute you're crying, and the next minute you're angry about all this, you know, the things that Eve brings up, both what she's going through personally, but also what's being experienced in our world. And so it's just spectacular that way. And of course, understanding her as a patient and as now as a friend, even more special. And I'm just glad that she's here doing this and sending this message and telling her story. And I just was so moved today by how important that is. So
I'm struck by what a different world is here today than when the first time that we saw this play, and the parallels, the extraordinary parallels between Eve's story and what's going on in our world now. These connections that she has built between her trauma as a child and her trauma of absorbing these countless stories from Congolese women who had never had a voice before, and the trauma of her surgery and her chemo and her prognosis. I'm just struck by how these are not just convenient narrative threads. These are the source of Eve's extraordinary power in this world. She doesn't compartmentalize anything. Her life experiences, her activism, her writing, everything goes into this singular force, not to tell her truth, but to change us and jolt us out of our complacency and make us contribute to the change that needs to happen in this world, especially now. And there's such a difference between exposing your story and then taking the next step, which is doing something about it. And we got the chance to see what Eve and Christine and the women in the Congo are doing about it. And I think our country could learn a tremendous amount from that.
Could you talk a little bit more about that in terms of the trip to the Congo and what you experienced there? What was that trip like, and what was City of Joy like?
Well, I'll start with that by just saying that Our first trip to the Congo was, of course, indirectly inspired by Eve, because Eve was the person who brought the world's attention to what was going on in the Congo. But we hadn't even met Eve at the time we were to set off for our trip with not just us, but a group of other extraordinary people. Lois McGuire's in the audience with us today, and another surgeon, Emmanuel Trabucco. We had set off to do this kind of in a crazy way on our own, and we had put in a year of intense planning and purpose and collection of supplies with a very specific goal of introducing some less invasive surgical equipment for the surgeries that they were doing there. And we literally were getting in the car to go to the airport, and we got word that the Icelandic volcano had erupted. And quickly we realized our entire trip was gone. There was no way to get there. And I wept. I mean, I remember sitting in that room together. These guys don't cry as much as I do, but I just couldn't believe it. I mean, how could you ever have planned for that? And as it turned out, and as so many things turn out in life, if we let them, it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because by the time we eventually regrouped to go, 2 weeks after Eve's second surgery, and the story of how she came to us is also equally incredible, but 2 weeks after her second surgery, she got on that plane with us and went with us to the Congo. And what we were able to do was orders of magnitude different if she had not been with us on that trip.
I mean, for me, it was really a gift to be asked to go. I mean, it was just an incredible experience. You hear about it, you've seen footage, but until you're really there and seeing it firsthand and hearing the stories directly out of patients' mouths, it just moves you in a way that you've never been moved before. And it was just an incredible gift. And so for Eve to invite me to go and be part of that experience was a tremendous gift to me. And it's helped me in many ways as a physician, of course, but just a deeper understanding of the pain and suffering in the world and what people survive and try to get through. And then all of the other people that are there to help them back up and to get them on their feet again and to try to get them to a good life. And that probably impressed me the most of all those people that do it day in and day out. We're just there for a blink of time, but there's so many people, and it's so important. And it just really overwhelmed me.
Yeah, I'll second that. It was overwhelming for me as well. And what we do, we hear a lot of awful stories and see a lot of awful things that happen to people, but I was still just wholly unprepared for what we saw in the DRC. And some of the things, you see it with your own eyes and you still can't believe that you're seeing it. I mean, it's really pretty horrendous what's happening there, and it certainly changed me. It was a life-changing experience for me to go there.
Thank you. I want to circle back to what you were saying about Eve's story inspiring action. And I'm wondering if either the play or her memoir or even just working with Eve as a patient has changed anything about your practice or how you view what you do every day.
It's changed us all. We have become like a family to each other, because this experience in many ways can't be spoken. It's, as Sean alluded to, the stories, we can't repeat them because it's unspeakable in some ways. And so to honor these women, you have to find a way to not just absorb the story, but to do better. And I really do feel that responsibility from having been a witness there. A second way that it has changed me is that I find myself telling patients parts of Eve's story a lot, not with her name attached to it, of course, but something about Eve's experience, her ability to become stronger from what she's been afflicted with is just extraordinary. And I will never forget the day that she called me when she developed this abscess. And that was, I think, really the lowest point that she felt. And when she called me to tell me this, I said, "Oh, that's fantastic." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I remembered in my training that I had once asked a mentor who was a brain cancer oncologist how he did it when all of his patients died. And he said, "Not all of my patients die. And I've noticed that the ones who live are the ones who developed an infection in the area of the tumor after their surgery. And I've been trying to figure out how to recreate that environment in a way that could directly fight the tumor." And so I said that to Eve, and she immediately was able to harness, just as she did with that chemotherapy, to harness the power of that toxicity to live and to keep going and to make a difference. And there's a lesson in there for us, for all of us, in how to do that. That is the power of resiliency and the power of change. And I don't know of another person on this earth that has it to the degree that Eve does.
I mean, the experience having Eve as a patient, was just very special. I mean, every single patient we treat is special and unique, but there's some that really stand out. Of course, Eve's personality and her ability to be brutally honest and be very vocal certainly is memorable. And she taught me a lot. Because of her honesty and her openness and her feedback, and I didn't always get great feedback, let me tell you, but it was honest, and it's important for us as physicians to know what patients are going through, because there's so many parts of their care that we don't see and we don't appreciate, especially as surgeons. I think Sean would agree that we don't see the recovery at home. We don't see the nausea and the emotional roller coasters and how it affects the family and the friends and the psychology of it. I mean, that's what impressed me the most, how it dredges up old feelings and old memories. And it's a very daunting experience for any patient to go through. And as physicians, I think we have to be much more attuned to that and understand that and be able to be open to it and offer, some guidance and listen, mainly just listen. And so Eve, she really helped me with that. And it's made me appreciate, so much more to what I do that happens outside the office, outside the operating room. And so, her message, in the way that she does it and in her style is very powerful. But it's a very, very important message, especially as medicine becomes almost industrialized in the way we approach it, where there's so many pressures on us to see more patients, to do more, to cut costs. And what we're losing is our time with patients. And that's a really unfortunate thing, and we have to resist that. Because, as she said, it doesn't take long. It just takes a few minutes. Shut the rest of the world out and just connect for a minute. Because patients need to have that trust in you. Because you're going to go on a journey with them that's complicated, it's scary. And it's scary for us too, as physicians, because we want to do right and we want to make sure it all works out fine, and it doesn't always. So it was a very growing experience, and I had a lot of great conversations with Eve about that, more than I have with any other patient. And so I thank her for that, and it's helped me, and it's helped other patients, which she, I think she would appreciate that.
When my son was little and he was talking to me, a lot of times I would be distracted by, the other 100 things I'd have to do, and sometimes he would grab me by the face with both hands and make sure I was looking at him and say, Dad, you know, I really want you to listen to me right now. And I felt like that's the way it was with Eve, is she just, Dr. Sean, I need you to listen to what I'm telling you right now. And, you know, one of the things she told me was that I needed to share more of myself with patients. And it took me a little while to sort of digest that and understand that and act on it. But there's probably worse things you can be told. You know, she could have told me to share less of myself with patients, 'cause I'm not very likable. So I'll take some of Deb's optimism for that one. But there was a line in the play that I'd missed before. You know, when she's listing all the things that could have caused her cancer, when she's trying to figure out, was it all the tab I drank, and it was something about, did I have too many barriers, or did I not have enough walls? You know, was I too close to people? Was I too far from people? And I think that's something that all physicians kind of struggle with. You know, how engaged, how close can we be to patients? How can we keep them at arm's length or not? And that's a different balance for everybody. You can't get too close because you can't make those objective decisions, and it's harder to bring hope to patients if you get too close to them as well. So it's really a difficult balance, and that's something I've thought of a lot more after the time I've spent with Eve.
I would just add on Sean's comment that I think in the way we educate physicians and have over many centuries, one big missing piece of that is the humanity part. And it's a difficult curriculum to have. It's much easier to teach biochemistry and pathology. It's very black and white, very objective, but the humanities are the part that we have to work more at. And so I'm encouraged because there's a lot of interest in that and a lot of work being done in that area. And so I think it's very exciting, and it will lead to better care of patients. So again, that's something that Eve has really instilled in me as something to push in the ways that I can in the world of education.
Thank you. I want to open it up for questions from you. Speak loudly if you can, and I will repeat your question so that everybody can hear it. Yes?
Hi, how do you think it would be to have Eve's play, we just saw videotaped or made into a little film that would be shown in medical schools all over the place?
The question was about how Eve's show could be videotaped and potentially shown in medical schools.
I was actually thinking of that exact thing as I was watching the play this time. And just as a required part of the curriculum, I was thinking that I'm going to give all of my trainees that work with me her book, you know, to read, to understand, you know, in a big way what patients go through. But yeah, I mean, this could be an incredible experience that I think could change anybody's life forever in terms of how they view their patients as a physician. Great idea.
And I think the visual would be stronger.
Yeah.
I'm an English teacher, but even stronger than a book because you can't put it down. Once you're in,
Right.
you got to see the whole
Right.
thing through. So you get the optimism at the end. But
Yeah,
a book, you can
agreed.
say, oh, this
Yeah.
is too much pain. I
Yeah.
can't go through it. But visual. And she's
Yes.
magnificent.
Is there a lesson in all of this about how to be a patient? One of the things that he talks about is leaving Sloan Kettering and going to Beth Israel.
Yeah.
And I find in all of the episodes of My Life and Family and such, that being on top of a situation when you're in the hospital or having your caregivers be involved, it's a tough challenge. And I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
The question was if there's anything to be gleaned from this about how to be a patient.
I have to take a stab at that because my husband works at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Here's what I think. There are good doctors and bad doctors at every medical institution in the United States of America. And I do think at Mayo Clinic we really pride ourselves on being very patient-focused. But you know, again, it does come down to the individual. And I think as patients, for me too, I try to find an individual physician that I feel that immediate sense of trust with, just as Eve described when she met Dr. Handsome. You have to have that. And if you don't feel that, you should advocate for yourself and go somewhere else, find something else.
Yeah.
Just this week, I'm a therapist and I have a few clients that are doctors. So I want to share with you something that was shared with me by one of my female doctor clients. She was an atheist and she's a practicing doctor. And she had an experience of going to an Indian reservation with an ex-boyfriend and seeing a number of triple rainbows followed by other rainbows and some spiritual experiences that taught her that humanity is missing from our medicine, and humanity is, and I think what she means too is compassion. That humanity is compassion, and that is what is, and the holistic picture of bringing together spirituality and medicine. That in Western medicine we've so mechanized and dehumanized, it's taken away the spirituality and the emotional that, and our daughter who's about to go trying to make a decision right now as to whether to become a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner or whatever, felt this in college in her biology classes at that level too. There was so much about the human heart wasn't there, love wasn't there. And I want to hear what you all think about that. How do you see bringing that into what you do?
The question is about bringing spirituality into medicine and practice. Humanity and compassion as well.
I have to say I'm a skeptic that can be taught. I know that I'm a compassionate person, and I was a compassionate person long before I went to medical school. I feel a connection with every one of my patients, and nobody taught me that. It is just the way I travel through the world. So I think I'm not sure that those factors can be taught, but I think they can be stripped away by a system that treats you as a commodity. And we're at risk for that not only with patients, but with care providers as well, to be treated as a commodity where you're forced into a relationship that can't possibly foster that spiritual connection and that compassion. And that's why you see some of the highest rates of burnout among care providers, as in any profession, because they're desperate to recover that sense of connection with patients. So I don't think it's an individual flaw as much as it is a mechanistic flaw in the way that we transactualize the care provider and patient relationship.
Yeah, I would say that our medical system is broken. I think it'd be difficult to argue otherwise. And physicians probably know that more than anybody. As far as the spiritual part of that, I think that's very different for different patients, though. So some people, that's extremely important for them, and we should have a system that allows that accommodates that. Other people are much more interested in the destination than the journey, and I have plenty of patients who thank me, profusely and say, thank you for everything you've done, but I hope I never see you again, and that's okay. And I say, I hope I never see you again either, but if you need me, I'm here. And they just want to get through this, and they want to get on to the rest of their life, and many of them just want to forget about this whole experience, and that's okay too. Eve, definitely this is a lot more about the journey, and this had a huge impact on her life, and that's great that she was able to sort of evolve because of her experience, but that's not the case for everybody.
Two more questions. Yes.
I'm just wondering if part of what you did was to be able to build greater capacity for some of the surgery or some of the medical treatment there, or if what you do is so specialized that teams need to continue to go back on a regular basis.
Well, we've struggled with that a lot because, there's definitely such a thing as medical voyeurism, where you drop in and look around and have a great experience and drop out and back to your busy, privileged life. And we were determined not to do that. I hope we succeeded. We really tried to go with a very specific goal in mind, as opposed to just showing up and saying, how can we help? Because in reality, you can't help very much. It's a drop in the bucket. So each time we went with a very specific, primarily educational purpose. And I hope that our goal is to continue that, primarily in the educational realm, with exchange of resources, lectures, and online educational resources that the doctors and medical students in Congo don't have access to, that we can share with them electronically. And that's going to be our main focus going forward.
Yes, I just think that scene of the woman who came in to help with the flatulence, I thought that was so and wasn't paid, and it was all volunteer at Mayo, right? I presume you know her.
I know her. No, patients.
The question was about Cindy, the fart doctor.
Nobody makes people feel better than Cindy, because you know what it's like to have it trapped in there, and you just want to get it out, you know, and you feel so good. But Eve's point about these sort of silent heroes, you know, and you know they do it because they get so much out of it. They're not doing it for any fame or fortune or big paycheck. They do it because they get the reward directly from the patient, and that's a beautiful thing. And we need more people that do that kind of work and are appreciated. It's nice to be appreciated, obviously, but they're probably not going to get very much of that for the most part. But they do it because they see that they get so much out of making someone happy, and they know what they're doing. But we need to encourage more of that, I think, and there's a lot of people out there that I think would be perfect for that kind of role, and I would encourage anybody to do that. We have a huge number of volunteers at Mayo Clinic. It's amazing. I don't know how that all started or where that came from, but whether you're a greeter at the door or you're someone like Cindy, I mean, it's amazing, and it makes the Mayo Clinic a special place, and that's really what's the special part about it. It's some of that stuff that happens behind the scenes that I think makes Mayo really special.
One of the things that really makes me smile about that scene is that, you know, Eve fully embraced sort of the Midwestern quirks that are available to patients at the Mayo Clinic, but boy, did the Mayo Clinic get a taste of Eve. You know, there were shamans and chanting and poetry readings, and it was really good for the Mayo Clinic to have Eve there for a while. I think they learned as much from her as she learned from them.
You know, we get a lot of credit for what happens at Mayo Clinic, but it's people like that I think really make it a special place. Like Eric said, a few years ago, it was probably more than a few years ago, there's a documentary someone was filming about Mayo Clinic, and they sort of haphazardly ran into a house cleaner who was cleaning a doorknob or something. They asked her what she was doing, and she said, "Oh, I'm saving lives, because when I clean this, it reduces the risk of infection." And they ended up taking out the interview. This is a true story. They took out the interview with the CEO and put this clip in with the housekeeper. And so I thought that was great that they recognized the importance of that, and she was recognized for that.
Thank you so much for being here today and for all the... And if you'd like to come back, this series is ongoing throughout the run, so you can check on the website and see all the talks that are happening through March. So thank you for being here.